Hello and welcome to our webinar. Before we get started, just a couple things. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to raise your hand. Before we get started, sorry, streaming on YouTube as well. Feel free to raise your hand in the Zoom or use the Q&A function, and we will answer all questions at the end of the presentation. You can also use our chat if you have any questions, and we will answer them at the end. And with that, I think we're ready to get started. So thank you for joining our Rethinking Wi-Fi Monitoring, a user-first approach. I'll introduce my co-host here in a second. This is Panos. Just to go over a couple slides. See your Wi-Fi through the eyes of your end users, which is what NetBeez specializes in, is end user monitoring and being able to flip the script to reveal what is actually happening in real time from the end user's point of view. On today's agenda, we'll have a brief overview, go over some Wi-Fi monitoring challenges, NetBeez agents, Wi-Fi sensors and endpoints, and then some testing capabilities that NetBeez has, along with Wi-Fi metrics and tools that you can use. And then we'll have a quick Q&A to answer any questions that you have. And here are our presenters today, myself and Panos from the dev team. I'll turn it over to you, Pano.
Thank you, Jess, for the introduction. And let's get started, right? So why are we here today? Most of us are dealing with Wi-Fi networking, right? And of course, other than designing, planning, and installing Wi-Fi networks, there comes the time where we need to manage them and support the users of them, right? So the challenge with Wi-Fi is that, of course, we're familiar that is the first thing that gets blamed when there is bad user experience, right? And how do we know now when a complaint comes in if the issue is indeed the Wi-Fi, or is it the ISP or the backbone, or it's an application issue, right? When there's like application slowness, or if there is an issue like DNS, for example, right? And that becomes even more challenging when the locations and the users we need to support are remote. Might not be on campus, they might not be in walking distance where they can come to us, or can go to them and understand what they might be facing. So, and once you have users on the network, how do we measure metrics like download and upload speed, validate authentication association, what's the signal strength, etc., right? So these are all metrics and data points that we need to know in order to help and troubleshoot bad user experience on the Wi-Fi network, but also the wired network. But we'll focus today here on wireless network specifically. So how do we do this, right? How does NetBeez solve this challenge? So the idea that we collect information and data from the user's perspective, and we do that by using either Wi-Fi hardware sensors or software endpoints installed on the user's laptop. The purpose of these sensors is to collect all these data points I talked about: upload, download, performance, latency, HTTP response time, from multiple sides of the network, from the user's perspective, where the users sit. Because we might have some of this information from the access point perspective, different vendors offer different flavors of this. But at the end of the day, if you don't have a sensor, let's say, next to the user's desk, or even better, installed on their laptop, you get only partial view of their experience. So again, the sensors collect this information and present them to us on our dashboard, from where we can, of course, build historical information, baselines, and get alerted, more importantly, when an issue comes up. And that helps a lot in order to be proactive with user experience performance issues. So this is what the sensor looks like. I have a picture there of the hardware sensor. It's a small footprint, 5 by 7 inches, both in size, power consumption, weight, of obviously, right? It's easy to ship, plug and play. So if you have a remote site, of course, we ship per customer dozens of those or hundreds, right? Where the installation has to be easy, right? So they're powered over Ethernet. All they need to do is plug them into the network, and then you get to manage them and control them from the NetBeez dashboard. Similarly, for the software endpoints, we support Windows, Mac, and Linux. And those, again, they can be installed with a mass management system like Intune, etc., where now it's a background process running on the user's laptop and collects pretty much the same information and runs the same tests a hardware sensor does. So now to dig a little bit more into the metrics we collect to get this remote user experience, right? We run two sets of tests. The first set is what we call periodic or real-time test, because they usually run on an interval. So we can, for example, set a latency ping test run every 5 seconds, right? A DNS test run every 30 seconds. And this, of course, the data collected from the sensors are being uploaded on the NetBeez dashboard, and we have a real-time historical view together with averages, and from there you can configure alerting and browse data, understand if an issue, for example, came up, if it's intermittent, when it started, if it stopped, etc., right? So just to summarize here, we have a set of these ping, DNS, HTTP, traceroute, and path analysis tests. So you probably know what the first four are. Path analysis, now it's what we call traceroute on steroids. And this is a more advanced and detailed view of the flow of traffic between two endpoints, the NetBeez agent, and can be an IP, host, URL, right? Path analysis gives just better visibility of the traffic flow between A and B. Now, the second set of tests is what we call schedule tests. These are, we call them scheduled because you can set them on specific to run specific times. Typically, when you have something like a speed test, right, you don't need to run this every few minutes, right? Of course, you might clog your network. Usually, you need to run it like a few times a day. So you can schedule these types of tests, this set of tests, to run, let's say, a couple of times during business hours, let's say at 9 a.m. and 1 p.m., and then a couple more times off hours, like 7 p.m. and 1 a.m., right? And then similarly, you have historical information, alerting, etc. So from here, you know what, from these tests, you know what network speed is. That's typical upload, download, latency type of test that uses an internet-based server to measure this performance. And there are several flavors of this out there, like there's one offered by Netflix. We use one from Cloudflare, also one supported by NDT Labs, which is sponsored by Google, right? So again, typical speed test that you know of. Then just to, for the ones who don't know what iPerf is, so iPerf is again a bandwidth test tool, but now you can control both the source and the destination. So you can measure, let's say, a bandwidth on your one network, running in between two NetBeez agents, or maybe you can have a NetBeez agent on your AWS or Azure or GCP infrastructure and run an end-to-end test from your remote branch to your cloud infrastructure or data center. VoIP, again, what VoIP test is, it's a synthetic VoIP test between two NetBeez agents. And finally, there I'm listing custom command. This is coming soon. It's not released yet. We'll have another webinar about that, but pretty much it's going to be the ability to run any type of, let's say, script or command on a remote agent and then get the results on the dashboard. In the context of Wi-Fi monitoring, this can be, for example, you can do custom things such as you can scan a remote sensor with an SID scan and be able to detect, let's say, rogue access points, right? Or SIDs that shouldn't be there, right? So this is what this looks like. So now going a bit more into the Wi-Fi side, other than the synthetic polling with the tests which I just mentioned, you can track information like send and receive bits per second, what's the signal strength, link quality, the bitrate established with the access point, and also do things like SID scans, right? Similar to the custom command I just mentioned, this can be useful, let's say, when you're troubleshooting an issue, let's say with a remote user that they're in a city environment, an apartment building. They might be in a very dense environment with dozens or more access points, right? So if you have a visibility, a view of what the air looks like around their laptop and where they connect to, what channel and what else is being broadcast in the same channel, you may be able to understand and advise them accordingly to configure their router, right? Or plug into the router, right? If you want to solve your Wi-Fi problems, you can just bypass Wi-Fi by using a nice good old wire and plug into your router, right? So now another set of data point and testing we do has to do with the Wi-Fi association authentication and DHCP process and timing. This is exclusive for Wi-Fi sensors. So you can configure the agents. At the end of the day, an agent is another client in your network, right? So you configure a Wi-Fi profile on it, like WPA3, Enterprise, or whatever. And you can also configure the agent to monitor multiple SSIDs. So in a typical, let's say, enterprise environment, you have, let's say, 3 or 4 SSIDs. Let's say your guest one, the open guest one, the corporate one, .1x, right? And maybe an IoT or whatever, right? So you can use actually a single sensor to monitor all 3 or 4 of them in a round-robin fashion. And each time the sensor connects and disconnects to an SID, it also measures the timing. And if it fails in a specific part of this process, it's going to report that on the dashboard. And that's useful also when, of course, when you connect to a Wi-Fi network, you have an established connection. You might not know issues that come up only when you try to connect, right? So you can also trigger the sensor or the agent to periodically disconnect and reconnect in order to test this all these 3 steps. For example, if you run out of IPs, your DHCP pool gets exhausted, you won't know until you try to connect to it, right? So that's the idea behind this. Finally, packet capture. When everything else fails for troubleshooting, we go to the good old like packet capture, right? Again, the problem here is that let's say you have a remote site, but you don't have any local like skilled IT to help you with this. How do you do a packet capture from the user perspective? If you have NetBeez sensor there, that's exclusive again to NetBeez sensors. You can do it from the dashboard. From the dashboard, you pick your sensor, you choose the channels you want to scan, the time duration, and run the scan and download the pickup on your laptop for further analysis with Wireshark, etc. Again, how do you do this if you don't have a user there, right? You either have to send somebody there, wait for the issue to happen, let's say, and capture it, so waste time and resources for this issue. So again, the sensor here, the remote, let's say, visibility, and eyes are through the NetBeez sensor. And just at the end, and getting towards the end here, some questions about our sensors that we usually get, like in terms of their specs. You can see here what the hardware sensors up top look like. Again, small footprint, small power and size. A device supports both PSU and PoE, 5 by 7 inches by 1 inch, and supports a tri-band, so it supports 2.4, 5, and 6 gigahertz. In terms of security protocols, we support, of course, all the, everything that is available in release by now, WPA2, WPA3, open and enhanced open enterprise methods, right? And another common question we get about specifically the Windows, Mac, Linux endpoints is, okay, if I'm going to install this now, another background process on my user's laptop, right? They're worried, you might be worried, hey, have so many other processes running, there are VPNs, scanning, etc. Is it gonna, does it adapt? So in terms of resource consumption, the endpoint is really like low maintenance, like low consumption. CPU is less than 1% on average. RAM, you can see there are the values for RAM, and disk requirements, again, for today's laptops are pretty minimal. And just to recap, right? So about remote Wi-Fi monitoring, right? The need, as always, is to have this Wi-Fi digital experience, right? We need that for troubleshooting, to know at the end of the day if our network is up to specs, right? And if an issue comes up, how do we troubleshoot it? How do we detect it? And the challenge is that we have remote sites, small offices, users working from home. How do we get this visibility on our end, right? And the solution we propose is to use a sensor, right? Either hardware or a Windows endpoint. And I would invite you, if you want to learn more. I know we covered here the basics, and we gave you an overview of what the problem and solution we have for this problem is. But I would invite you to request a demo. Go to netbeez.net, find the demo, request a demo button, and we'll reach out to tell you more about NetBeez and answer your questions. And with that, I'm going to open it to any questions you might have. Jess, do you have anything, or?
I'm actually not seeing any questions, but I put a couple of links in the chat in case you think of a question after we end this webinar. You can feel free to email it to marketing@netbeez.net, or I also put a link to schedule a demo if you would like to see the platform live. Also, please join our community. There's a link to it right here. If you have any questions about the product, there are probably answers on the community. The same with Reddit or on our website, netbeez.net. We have a chat function that you could also ask any questions that you have there. And I think that's it. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you, Pano, for running the webinar.